You think you know history. Think again. The powerful Habsburg dynasty ruled vast empires stretching from Spain to the far reaches of Eastern Europe. They were emperors and empresses, warriors and politicians, figures of immense public power. But behind the heavy velvet curtains of their grand palaces, some of these famous rulers harbored incredible secrets. Their public lives were about crowns and decrees, but their private worlds were filled with artistic creation, scientific discovery, and deep intellectual pursuits. These were not just hobbies. For some, these passions were as intense as any military campaign, often pursued away from the prying eyes of their courts. They were secretly artists, scholars, and thinkers, hiding their true callings within the rigid expectations of royalty. Prepare to step behind the scenes and discover the hidden talents of Europe's most powerful family. Number 6. Joseph II, the Enlightenment Scholar King. The year is 1780. A man walks the streets of Vienna, not in royal robes, but often in plain dark clothing, a simple hat pulled low. He stops to talk to shopkeepers, to observe farmers, to ask questions of doctors and teachers. This man is Emperor Joseph II, and his walk through the city is not a casual stroll. It is a form of deep personal research. He is gathering information, collecting data, and observing his empire, like a meticulous scholar studying a complex subject. His private moments were often consumed by books, by scientific discussions, and by the relentless pursuit of practical knowledge to reshape his vast domains. Joseph II was a ruler who believed in the power of reason above all else. He was deeply influenced by the Enlightenment, a movement that celebrated science, logic, and human progress. His personal library was not filled with romantic novels or tales of chivalry. Instead, it overflowed with books on philosophy, law, economics, medicine, and agriculture. He read widely, devouring texts by French encyclopedists, German philosophers, and British economists. He studied the works of Voltaire and Rousseau, not as a passing fancy, but as guiding principles for how a state should be governed and how its people should live. His mind was a restless engine, constantly processing information and looking for solutions. His approach to ruling was like a vast, ongoing experiment. He wanted to improve the lives of his subjects, to modernize society, and to create a state that was efficient and just. This drive led him to enact an astonishing number of reforms, often personally overseeing their details. He established new hospitals, not just for the sick, but as places for medical research and training. He would visit these institutions not just for ceremonial duties, but to personally inspect the conditions, to speak with the doctors, and to understand the latest medical practices. He was fascinated by anatomy and the workings of the human body. He believed that understanding the physical world was key to improving human well-being. One of his most radical acts was the abolition of serfdom in his lands in 1781. It was the result of years of personal reflection, study, and observation of the harsh realities faced by peasants. He saw serfdom not just as an injustice, but as an inefficient system that hindered agricultural productivity and human potential. He carefully studied the economic arguments for free labor, reading treatises on land management and agricultural output. He believed that if people were free to work their own land and profit from their efforts, the entire economy would flourish. This was a scholar's conclusion applied with the force of an emperor. Joseph II also took a keen interest in education, believing that an enlightened populace was essential for a strong state. He reformed the universities, shifting their focus from traditional theology to practical subjects like law, medicine, and engineering. He founded new schools for different trades and crafts, making education accessible to a wider range of people. He would personally visit classrooms, observing teaching methods, and speaking with students. He saw education as a fundamental tool for societal progress, not just for the elite. His deep personal commitment to learning extended to every corner of his empire. His reform efforts were often met with resistance from the nobility and the church, who clung to traditional privileges. But Joseph was undeterred. He was convinced by his own studies and observations that these changes were necessary. He even dismantled monasteries that he deemed unproductive, repurposing their wealth and buildings for hospitals or schools. This was a ruler acting on scholarly principles. Even when those principles challenged long-standing power structures, he approached governance with the methodical precision of a scientist, testing hypotheses and adjusting his policies based on their outcomes. He compiled detailed reports on state finances, population statistics, and agricole yields, treating his empire as a vast data, set to be analyzed and unguided. Joseph II's personal life reflected his scholarly nature. He had few close friends and preferred solitude or the company of intellectuals. He was known for his simple habits, often eating plain meals and disliking elaborate court ceremonies. He found more satisfaction in discussing new scientific discoveries or philosophical ideas than in attending balls or hunts. His correspondence with leading thinkers of his time reveals a mind constantly engaged with the intellectual currents of his era. He corresponded with figures like Giacomo Casanova, discussing everything from politics to social morality. He sought knowledge wherever he could find it, constantly pushing the boundaries of his own understanding. He also had a deep interest in military science, not just as a commander, but as a strategist and innovator. He studied military tactics, logistics, and technology, seeking ways to make his army more efficient and modern. He introduced new training methods and equipment, based on his own analysis of successful campaigns throughout history. He saw the army as another complex system to be imperated for rational thought and scientific principles. His visits to military academies were not merely inspections, but opportunities to engage in deep discussions about strategy and engineering. Joseph II's reign was short, lasting only 10 years, but his impact was profound. His relentless pursuit of knowledge and his unwavering commitment to applying reason to governance left a lasting mark on the Habsburg lands. He died believing he had failed, but his vision of an enlightened, efficient, and just state, shaped by his scholarly mind, continued to influence European thought. Long after his death, he was an emperor who governed with a library at his fingertips and a scientific laboratory in his mind, constantly seeking the optimal solution for the complexities of human society. His rule was a grand intellectual project, a testament to an emperor who was truly a scholar in disguise. He was driven by an internal compass of logic and progress, making decisions based on what his rigorous study told him was correct, not what tradition dictated. His life was a constant quest for knowledge and its practical application. Number 5. Maria Theresa, the Scholar Empress of Reform. Picture this: a young woman, barely in her 20s, suddenly thrust into power, facing a continent of enemies who doubt her ability to rule. This was Maria Theresa, and her story is not just one of political survival, but of a quiet, relentless scholarly pursuit that shaped an empire. While many saw her as a formidable monarch, few truly understood the depth of her intellectual engagement, her personal dedication to learning, and how her own scholarly habits drove the radical reforms that secured her dynasty's future. She was a self-made scholar whose education continued long after her childhood lessons ended. Maria Theresa was born into a world of immense privilege, but also immense expectation. Her early education, while comprehensive for a woman of her time, was heavily focused on languages, history, and the arts deemed suitable for a princess. However, when she ascended to the throne in 1740, the reality of ruling a vast fragmented empire demanded a far deeper understanding of statecraft, law, and economics. She did not shrink from this challenge. Instead, she embarked on a rigorous program of self-education, becoming her own most demanding tutor. She famously worked long hours, often starting her day before dawn. Her personal chambers were not just for receiving dignitaries or managing family affairs. They were also her study, filled with books, maps, and official documents. She immersed herself in the details of her government, personally reading dispatches, examining financial records, and scrutinizing legal codes. She taught herself the intricacies of international law, the complexities of military logistics, and the principles of sound financial management. This was not merely signing papers, It was a deep intellectual engagement with the machinery of state. Maria Theresa understood that the survival of her empire depended on its modernization, and she saw education as the cornerstone of this transformation. Her most lasting legacy was her profound reform of the Austrian education system. She established new universities and academies, shifting their focus from traditional, often stagnant curricula to subjects that were practical and useful for the state. Law, medicine, science, and public administration. She founded the Thesian Military Academy in 1751, a grounding institution for training officers, which she personally oversaw. She insisted on a curriculum that included mathematics, engineering, and strategy. A scholarly approach to military leadership. She also took a direct interest in the University of Vienna, traditionally a stronghold of conservative thought. Maria Theresa pushed for its reform, inviting leading scholars and scientists from across Europe to teach there. She championed the establishment of new faculties, like the Faculty of Medicine, which quickly became one of Europe's leading centers for medical research and training. She believed that a state needed highly educated professionals to thrive, and she was willing to challenge centuries of tradition to achieve this goal. She personally approved many academic appointments, ensuring that the best minds were teaching within her empire. Her commitment to scholarship extended to the sciences. She supported the establishment of the first botanical gardens in Vienna, not just for aesthetic pleasure, but for scientific study and the advancement of agricultural knowledge. She promoted the collection of natural specimens and sponsored expeditions to gather new plants and animals. She understood that scientific progress could lead to practical benefits for her people, from improved farming techniques to new medicines. Her court employed a number of leading scientists and naturalists with whom she often held detailed discussions. She was genuinely interested in their discoveries and their methods of inquiry. Maria Theresa was also a meticulous administrator, a quality stemming from her scholarly approach to governance. She reorganized the state bureaucracy, creating a more efficient and meritocratic system. She insisted on detailed reports and careful record-keeping, transforming the way her government functioned. She believed that clear data and organized information were essential for effective decision-making. Her daily routine included hours dedicated to reviewing these reports, dissecting arguments, and formulating policy. This was the work of a dedicated scholar, applied to the scale of an empire. Her own children received an education far more rigorous than was common for royals. She personally supervised their studies, ensuring they learned not just languages and courtly manners, but also history, law, and economics. She understood that her successors needed to be prepared for the immense responsibilities of rule, and she instilled in them her own dedication to lifelong learning. Her letters to her children often contained advice not just on moral conduct, but on the importance of diligence in study and the pursuit of knowledge. She modeled her own intellectual curiosity for them. Maria Theresa's personal engagement with legal reform also demonstrates her scholarly bent. She initiated the compilation of the Codex Theresianus, a comprehensive revision of the Austrian civil law. This massive undertaking involved years of painstaking research, legal analysis, and debate among experts, all supervised by the Empress herself. She understood that clear, consistent laws were fundamental to a just and orderly society. This was not a task she delegated entirely. She delved into the minutiae of legal principles, seeking fairness and clarity. Her deep understanding of history, particularly the history of her own dynasty and of Europe, guided many of her political decisions. She drew lessons from past conflicts and diplomatic maneuvers, applying them to the complex challenges of her own time. She saw herself as part of a long historical narrative, and she meticulously studied the triumphs and failures of her predecessors. This historical perspective gave her a strategic depth that often surprised her opponents. Her political correspondence often references historical precedents, showing her deep engagement with past events. Maria Theresa's life was a testament to the power of continuous learning. She began her reign under immense pressure, with many believing her gender and inexperience would lead to the downfall of her house. but through sheer intellect, diligence, and a tireless commitment to understanding the complexities of her world, she transformed her empire and secured her legacy. Her private scholarly endeavors directly translated into public monumental reforms. She was an empress who proved that knowledge meticulously acquired and thoughtfully applied could be the greatest weapon and the strongest foundation for power. Her approach to governance was that of a lifetime student, always observing, always learning, always refining her understanding of the world. Number 4. Leopold I, the composer emperor. Imagine an emperor ruling over vast lands, battling Ottoman invaders and navigating complex European politics. Now, imagine that same emperor late at night, sitting quietly at a harpsichord, composing intricate melodies or conducting a full orchestra of court musicians. This was Leopold I, a Habsburg ruler who harbored a deep and undeniable passion for music. His public life was filled with the heavy responsibilities of state, but his private world resonated with the sounds of his own compositions, making him one of the most musically accomplished monarchs in European history. His artistic pursuits were far more than a casual pastime. Leopold I was born into a world where music was an integral part of court life, but for him it was a calling that went far beyond mere appreciation. He received a thorough musical education from a young age, studying composition, counterpoint, and various instruments. He became proficient in playing the harpsichord, the viola da gamba, and other instruments. He did not just learn to play, he learned to create. His understanding of music theory was advanced, allowing him to compose complex and sophisticated pieces. He spent countless hours in his private music chambers, away from the demands of the throne, dedicating himself to his artistic craft. He composed an impressive body of work, including operas, oratorios, ballets, sacred music, and instrumental pieces. His compositions were not simplistic royal diversions. They were serious works of Baroque music, often demonstrating a profound understanding of harmony, counterpoint, and dramatic structure. He wrote sacred oratorios that were performed during Lent and operas for court celebrations, often with elaborate staging. He poured his creative energy into these compositions, meticulously writing out scores and refining his musical ideas. He saw music as a means of expressing deep emotions and spiritual truths. Leopold I was not just a composer. He was also a patron of the arts, attracting some of Europe's finest musicians and composers to his court in Vienna. He established the Imperial Court Orchestra as one of the leading musical ensembles of its time, hiring renowned talents like Johann Heinrich Schmelzer and Antonio Draghi. He fostered an environment where musical innovation could flourish, and his court became a vibrant center for Baroque music. He often participated in performances, himself sometimes conducting, sometimes playing an instrument. His love for the music, evident to all who witnessed it. His commitment to music was so profound that it influenced his daily routine. He scheduled time for composition, often early in the morning or late at night when the palace was quiet. He corresponded with leading musical figures across Europe, discussing techniques, new works, and theories. His private papers contain annotations and sketches related to his musical ideas, revealing a mind constantly engaged with his art. He viewed music not just as entertainment for the court, but as a serious intellectual and spiritual pursuit, a divine gift to be cultivated and expressed. One notable aspect of his compositions was their often deeply religious nature. As a devout Catholic, Leopold I often channeled his faith into his sacred music. His oratorios, in particular, conveyed profound spiritual narratives, using music to elevate and inspire. He saw his musical talent as a gift from God, and he used it to express his devotion. These works often had a solemn and reflective quality, standing in contrast to the often boisterous political life he led. It was in his music that he could explore his inner world and express his deepest beliefs. His love for opera was also legendary. He not only composed operas himself, but also commissioned numerous works from leading Italian composers. The court in Vienna became a hub for Italian opera, with spectacular productions mounted for special occasions. Leopold I would attend rehearsals, offering suggestions and discussing the dramatic and musical elements with the librettists and composers. He was actively involved in the creative process, potting his deep understanding of theatrical arts. He was known to spend hours discussing the nuances of arias or the staging of a scene. Leopold I's musical life provided a private sanctuary from the relentless pressures of ruling. When confronted with wars, political intrigue, and economic challenges, he found solace and expression in his art. It was a space where he could exercise a different kind of power, the power of creation. While his public image was that of a stoic and dutiful monarch, within the walls of his music room, he transformed into a passionate artist. His surviving musical scores bear witness to his dedication, his technical skill, and his profound love for the art form. His compositions continued to be performed at court, even after his death, a testament to their quality and the respect they commanded. They offered a unique glimpse into the soul of an emperor who, despite his immense public responsibilities, remained fundamentally a man of music. He proved that even the most powerful rulers could harbor secret artistic lives, finding their true voice not in royal decrees but in the harmony of notes and the rhythm of composition. His life illustrates that the pursuit of art can be as central and demanding for a monarch as any statecraft, offering a path to self-expression and intellectual engagement that transcended the political arena. He nurtured his musical talents with the same discipline he applied to governing. Number 3. Rudolf II, the alchemist, astronomer, and art collector. Imagine a powerful emperor who cares more about the secrets of the universe and the beauty of art than about ruling his vast domains. An emperor who prefers the quiet of his laboratory to the clamor of court, and the company of eccentric scholars to that of cunning politicians. This was Rudolf II, a Habsburg ruler whose reign was defined not by military conquests or grand reforms, but by his profound, almost obsessive pursuit of knowledge in alchemy, astronomy, and the collection of art. His palace in Prague was less a center of government and more a vast secret museum and research facility full of wonders and mysteries. Rudolf II moved his imperial court from Vienna to Prague in 1583, signaling his desire for a more secluded environment where he could pursue his intellectual passions. Without constant interference, his Hradčany castle became a hub for some of the most brilliant and sometimes controversial minds of the age. He invited astronomers, alchemists, mystics, artists, and naturalists from all over Europe to join his court. These individuals were not just guests. They were his collaborators, his teachers, and his companions in his endless quest for understanding. He spent vast sums of money supporting their work, providing them with lavish laboratories, observatories, and workshops. His fascination with alchemy was legendary. Rudolf truly believed in the possibility of transmuting base metals into gold, and he sponsored numerous alchemists, providing them with materials, equipment, and personal protection. He built elaborate laboratories within his castle filled with furnaces, retorts, and strange bubbling concoctions. He spent hours watching experiments, reading ancient texts on Hermetic philosophy, and discussing the hidden properties of matter. For him, alchemy was not just about wealth. It was a quest for understanding the fundamental laws of the universe, a spiritual journey to unlock nature's deepest secrets. He sought the philosopher's stone not just for riches, but for eternal life and perfect knowledge. Alongside alchemy, Rudolf was deeply immersed in astronomy and astrology. He provided patronage to two of the most significant astronomers of his time, Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler. Tycho Brahe established an observatory in Prague, meticulously recording planetary movements, laying the groundwork for modern astronomy. After Brahe's death, Kepler inherited his data and, under Rudolf's continued patronage, used it to formulate his groundbreaking laws of planetary motion. Rudolf himself was keenly interested in the heavens, collecting astronomical instruments and engaging in discussions about the cosmos. He saw astrology as a legitimate science, believing that the stars influenced human destiny, and he commissioned horoscopes for himself and for his empire. Rudolph's art collection was arguably the greatest of his time. He was an avid and discerning collector, amassing an astonishing array of paintings, sculptures, natural curiosities, and works of applied art. He acquired masterpieces by artists like Pieter Bruegel the Elder, Albrecht Dürer, and Paulo Veronese. He commissioned unique and often bizarre works, such as the fantastical portraits by Giuseppe Arcimboldo, which depicted human faces made of fruits, vegetables, and books. His collection was housed in various Kunstkammern, or Wunderkammern, cabinets of art and curiosities, within the castle, which were like private museums filled with objects that blurred the lines between art, science, and the exotic. He spent hours examining these objects, finding inspiration and wonder in their forms and origins. These collections were not just for display. They were tools for understanding the world, reflections of his insatiable curiosity. He collected rare clocks, automata, and scientific instruments, fascinated by their intricate mechanisms. His menagerie included exotic animals from distant lands, and his botanical gardens were filled with rare plants. He commissioned detailed drawings of natural specimens and strange anomalies, reflecting his desire to document and categorize the natural world. He believed that by gathering and studying these diverse objects, he could gain a holistic understanding of the universe. Rudolph's reclusive nature amplified his image as an eccentric scholar king. He rarely appeared in public, avoided court ceremonies, and often delayed signing important state documents. He preferred the company of his alchemists and astronomers, spending his days in intense intellectual pursuits. His mind was often elsewhere, lost in the mysteries of the cosmos or the secrets of matter, rather than the mundane affairs of state. This detachment from practical governance eventually led to political instability, but it also allowed him to pursue his intellectual passions with an unprecedented intensity. His private moments were often filled with sketching, reading rare manuscripts, or poring over maps and globes. He was a polyglot, fluent in several languages, which allowed him to access a wide range of scholarly texts. He employed scribes to copy ancient works and binders to create exquisite covers for his vast library. He personally oversaw the acquisition of many items, engaging in lengthy correspondence with agents and scholars across Europe. His palace was a quiet, almost secret, intellectual hub where the pursuit of knowledge trumped all other concerns. Rudolph II's reign stands as a unique chapter in Habsburg history, a testament to a ruler who was more a philosopher, scientist, and art connoisseur than a traditional monarch. His legacy is not found in military victories or political prowess, but in the enduring scientific discoveries made under his patronage and the unparalleled art collection he amassed. He was an emperor who lived in his mind, captivated by the boundless possibilities of human knowledge and artistic expression, proving that power could be channeled into the quiet, often hidden pursuit of intellectual and aesthetic wonder. He remained true to his inner calling, seeking the profound over the pragmatic and the mysterious over the obvious. Number 2. Charles V, the polyglot scholar emperor. Imagine a man who rules an empire so vast that the sun never sets on it, commanding armies and navigating the treacherous waters of European diplomacy. Now, picture that same man, not on a battlefield or in a throne room, but in a quiet monastery, surrounded by books, experimenting with clocks, and engaging in deep theological discussions. This was Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, King of Spain and ruler of territories stretching from the Americas to the Netherlands. Beneath his public persona as a powerful, world-weary monarch lay a profound intellectual curiosity and a scholarly mind, which became even more evident in his later years. Charles V was a true polyglot, a skill that was not just practical for ruling a diverse empire, but also reflected a deep intellectual capacity. He spoke an astonishing array of languages fluently: Spanish, French, German, Italian, and Latin. He famously said, "I speak Spanish to God, Italian to women, French to men, and German to my horse." This linguistic prowess allowed him direct access to the intellectual currents of his time, enabling him to read texts in their original languages, engage with scholars from different nations, and conduct diplomacy without relying solely on interpreters. His personal letters and pronouncements often show his command of these various tongues. His interest in theology was profound and lifelong. Charles V reigned during the tumultuous era of the Protestant Reformation, a period of intense religious debate and conflict. He was a devout Catholic, but he also harbored a genuine desire to understand the theological arguments put forth by figures like Martin Luther. He attended the Diet of Worms in 1521, not just as a political figure, but as an engaged participant in the theological discussions, seeking to resolve the religious divisions of his empire. He engaged in personal debates with leading theologians, seeking to reconcile differing viewpoints. His library contained numerous theological treatises, both Catholic and Protestant, which he studied carefully. Charles V was also a significant patron of humanist scholars who championed the revival of classical learning and emphasized human potential. He supported figures like Erasmus of Rotterdam, the renowned Dutch scholar and theologian, with whom he corresponded extensively. He recognized the value of intellectual inquiry and the power of knowledge to shape society. He saw humanism not as a threat, but as a path to a more educated and enlightened citizenry. His court was often host to intellectual discussions, where learned men debated philosophy, history, and ancient texts. He would listen intently, sometimes interjecting with his own questions and insights. His intellectual curiosity extended beyond theology and the humanities. He was keenly interested in the burgeoning fields of cartography and exploration. His empire included vast overseas territories, and he avidly followed the reports from explorers and navigators. He collected maps, globes, and navigational instruments. Fascinated by the expansion of geographical knowledge, he understood that knowledge of the world's geography was crucial for both governance and trade. His advisors often brought him new maps and detailed accounts of voyages, which he would study with great concentration. Perhaps the most striking example of Charles V's scholarly nature came after his dramatic abdication in 1556. He chose to retire to the monastery of Yuste in western Spain. Leaving behind the immense burdens of his empire, this was not a retreat into idleness. Instead, it was a deliberate choice to dedicate his remaining years to quiet contemplation, prayer, and intellectual pursuits. He brought with him a carefully curated library of over 1,000 books, reflecting his diverse interests. At Yuste, Charles V immersed himself in his studies. He continued his theological readings, delving into the writings of the Church, Fathers, and contemporary religious texts. He also pursued an unusual hobby for an emperor: clockmaking and mechanics. He had a passion for precise timekeeping and worked closely with a renowned clockmaker named Juanello Turiano, who joined him at the monastery. Charles would spend hours tinkering with clocks, dismantling them, and trying to improve their mechanisms. He reportedly worked on complex automata, small mechanical figures that moved on their own, demonstrating a profound interest in engineering and intricate design. This hands-on engagement with mechanics showed a practical, experimental side to his scholarly mind. He also cultivated a small garden at Yuste, experimenting with different plants and their cultivation. A quiet interest in botany, he continued to correspond with a select group of scholars and former advisors, discussing philosophy, history, and the state of the world, though from a distance. His daily routine at the monastery was structured around prayer, reading, and his various intellectual projects. He sought intellectual peace after a life of constant political turmoil. finding it in the disciplined pursuit of knowledge. Charles V's retirement to Euston cemented his image as a thoughtful, introspective ruler who valued the life of the mind as much as, if not more than, the trappings of power. He demonstrated that even an emperor who commanded the world could choose to dedicate himself to study and intellectual curiosity, finding profound satisfaction in understanding the world's complexities, from the vastness of empires to the intricate gears of a clock. His life offers a powerful testament to the hidden scholarly depths of a monarch whose public life was dominated by war and politics. He was a ruler who saw knowledge as a personal quest, a journey that continued until his final days. Number 1, Maximilian I, the last knight and literary emperor. Imagine an emperor who understood the power of storytelling long before public relations even existed. A ruler who didn't just commission art but actively participated in its creation, using it to craft his own legendary image. Maximilian I, often called the Last Knight, was a Habsburg ruler who blended medieval chivalry with Renaissance innovation. Not just on the battlefield, but in the world of art and literature. His secret was his profound, almost obsessive personal engagement with artistic and literary projects, making him an emperor who was truly an artist and author in his own right, shaping his legacy through ink and woodcut. Maximilian I was born in 1459, at the cusp of the Renaissance, and he embraced its spirit of innovation while still holding on to the ideals of chivalry. He saw himself as the embodiment of a heroic knight, and he was determined to ensure his story was told, not just by historians, but by artists and writers, working under his direct supervision, and often with his personal input. He understood that narratives could be as powerful as armies. His artistic pursuits were not passive patronage, they were active co-creation, a personal mission to define his place in history. His most famous literary projects were the autobiographical works Theurdank and Weisskönig. These were not mere biographies written by others. They were elaborate, allegorical poems, epic tales of a young knight's adventures and education, which Maximilian himself dictated, edited, and even personally wrote significant portions. Theurdank, for instance, describes his daring journey to claim his bride, Mary of Burgundy, full of perilous hunts, jousts, and narrow escapes. Weisskönig, or the White King, tells the story of his life and political career in allegorical form. These projects were incredibly ambitious, combining hundreds of detailed woodcut illustrations with poetic text. Maximilian was not just the subject of these works. He was their driving force, a meticulous artistic director. He personally oversaw the creation of the woodcuts that illustrated these books, collaborating closely with some of the most celebrated artists of his time, including Albrecht Dürer and Hans Berkmair. He would review the sketches, suggest changes, and ensure that every detail reflected his vision. He understood that these images would reach a wide audience, thanks to the revolutionary technology of the printing press, which he enthusiastically embraced. He was one of the first rulers to grasp the full potential of mass media for shaping public perception. His use of print media extended beyond his autobiographical works. He commissioned monumental woodcut projects, such as the Triumphal Arch and the Triumphal Procession, both massive artistic endeavors that celebrated his lineage, his achievements, and his imperial glory. The Triumphal Arch, for example, was designed to look like a massive stone archway made up of over 190 individual woodcut blocks, measuring an astonishing 3.7 meters high and 3.4 meters wide. It depicted his family tree, his battles, and his ceremonies. These were not just decorations. They were highly sophisticated artistic and political statements personally directed by the emperor himself. Maximilian also had a deep interest in architecture and monumental sculpture. He personally designed elements of his own elaborate tomb at the Hofkirche in Innsbruck. Although it was not completed in his lifetime, the tomb features 28 larger-than-life bronze statues of his ancestors and heroes. A project he conceived and initiated, he envisioned this as a lasting monument to his dynasty and to the ideals of chivalry. His involvement in these artistic undertakings was hands-on, showing a discerning eye for detail and a clear artistic vision. He viewed these projects as extensions of his own persona and legacy. Beyond grand projects, Maximilian also engaged in more personal forms of artistic expression. He was known to enjoy sketching and drawing. He collected scientific instruments and engaged in astronomical observation. Reflecting a broader Renaissance curiosity about the world, he was a keen hunter and a master of tournaments, but even these physical pursuits had an intellectual and artistic dimension for him. He saw them as living expressions of chivalric ideals, which he then meticulously documented in his literary works. He approached his physical prowess with the same detailed thought he applied to his artistic endeavors. Maximilian's court was a lively center for artists, writers, and printers whom he personally encouraged and funded. He fostered an environment where creative minds could flourish, all serving his grand vision of self-representation. He corresponded extensively with his collaborators, providing detailed instructions and feedback. His personal letters reveal a mind constantly engaged with narrative and visual composition, always thinking about how best to convey his message and his image to the world. He treated his life itself as a work of art, something to be crafted and perfected. Maximilian I's legacy as the last knight is inextricably linked to his role as a pioneering artist-emperor. He was a ruler who understood that power was not just about force, but also about narrative, image, and cultural influence. His personal dedication to literature and art allowed him to construct a timeless persona, ensuring his story would endure for centuries. He was not secretly an artist in the sense of being hidden, but rather in the sense that his active personal involvement in the creative process was often overshadowed by his political and military roles. He broke the mold of what an emperor could be, proving that the pen and the printing press could be as mighty as the sword, especially when wielded by an artistically inclined monarch. His reign was a grand performance, meticulously directed by its leading man, the emperor himself.